Welcome to Backstage Pass with Gail Davis, your invitation into the world of keynote speaking and event planning expertise. Join us as we pull back the curtain and dive into exclusive interviews with speaking industry experts. From seasoned speakers to master event planners, we're here to provide you with the ultimate backstage experience. Get ready to unlock valuable insights, tips, and strategies that will elevate your events and leave your audience inspired. Welcome to Backstage Pass. I am your host, Gail Davis, and I am really excited about today's conversation. My guest is someone that I had the privilege of hearing earlier this year at the Entrepreneur Organization Global Leadership Conference in Hawaii. And I knew right away she was someone whose message needed to reach even more audiences. Today, I'm joined by one of GDA Speaker's newest managed speakers. Her name is Sana Brock. She is a gifted storyteller, a very successful entrepreneur, and a speaker who helps audiences rediscover what it means to belong. Sana was born in Korea and abandoned at age 4. She was later adopted by a North American family and spent most of her life disconnected from her cultural roots until now. And her story is one of resilience, reflection, and belonging. What I also love, because we are both members of EO, is that she is also the founder of Luxe Decor, a multi-million-dollar interior design firm, and Maru, a fast-growing platform for designers and tradespeople. Her mission extends far beyond creating beautiful places. She's building communities where people feel a deep sense of belonging. Sana, welcome. I am so happy to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much for the warm welcome, Gail. So many nice things in there.
Well, I will never forget hearing you in Hawaii. I think you may know Jessica Nunez from our chapter. And she and I were sitting there, and we're both mothers, and we're listening to your story. And I remember we were just crying and holding each other up. It's such a powerful story. It really got to me emotionally. And I'd like to go back and kind of start with that event where I first heard you. The event was in Hawaii. It was so special, and you delivered this really, really great keynote. Can you share what that experience was like for you, taking the stage in Hawaii, sharing your story to thousands of entrepreneurs from all over the globe?
Well, you know what? It was an incredible experience for me. It was one that I didn't ever think that I would, like a journey that I ever thought I would take. And I think the craziest thing was that I realized I was right before Deepak Chopra. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? But what was fantastic was the preparation for the speech was exceptionally healing for me. So getting on that stage and speaking among peers was honestly, I can't even tell you, it was probably one of my biggest highlights of 2025. It was amazing.
I can imagine. You know, I work with a lot of speakers who are established, and then we work with some speakers who are new and they're getting started. And I think to be able to say you were the warm-up act for Deepak Chopra, that's a pretty good credential. And you held your own. It was just absolutely perfect.
You're so sweet. I remember getting off the stage and Deepak Chopra shook my hand and he said, Sana, well, actually, he didn't say my name, but he said, that was an incredible story. You're a gifted storyteller. And so for me, like I've been kind of holding that in my heart because I couldn't believe it. It was a really incredible experience.
It is an incredible story. And I know that the journey began long before you getting on the stage. For those people that are listening, I mean, I hit the highlights, and I mean very high level surface. Could you go back and share more of your story so people understand how you came to this important topic of belonging?
Absolutely. So I always kind of tell the story in a bit of a flippant way until more recently, is that I was abandoned when I was 4 years old, with a paper pinned to my sweater with my name and my birthday, and I was left on the stairs, and that was the story I was told my whole life. And very recently, I started to connect the dots of that abandonment and recently searched for my biological family. So it was really that whole understanding of my entire life of not knowing where I came from, believing that I was abandoned, to most recently finding an entire family in Korea and reconnecting with them. So for me, it's a really powerful, I would say, like this journey of self-discovery. And also, like I say it, I mean, and I'm going to continue to say it, is this healing, this whole idea of thinking that we belong, but then starting to understand, what does true belonging mean? So it was a journey that I think I had to take. And I've reconciled now the fact that I actually wasn't really abandoned in the way that I thought. So yeah, it's been really interesting for me.
You say you originally told the story in a flippant way, and then you talk about healing. So as you were growing up, did you realize that you were carrying these feelings that you had been abandoned, or did you kind of laugh it off or minimize it and only later learn that maybe there was some feeling of abandonment?
So absolutely. And I think trauma is stored in our body in different ways, and I'm learning more and more about it. And for me, it's because I never reconciled the fact that maybe I had trauma. I really I've been living a very full life. And then I understood one day, probably in my early 40s, that I really struggled with true connection. That I kind of, everybody liked me, but nobody knew me. It was this
Ooh.
whole idea of fitting in, but not really belonging. So that's when I started to say, how can I live a richer life? How can I connect more with people? What am I missing? And that's when I started to kind of unpack Pandora's box and start to realize, oh my gosh, I've been missing out. I've been missing out on some true lessons in my life to live a more fulfilled and more connected life and a life of belonging.
That is really powerful to say, that everybody liked me, but no one really knew me. That's
Mm-hmm.
super, super powerful. So I think you just said when you realized that you were in your 40s, what prompted you to go and see if you could find your birth family?
So I would say in a bit of a roundabout way, because finding my birth family only actually happened about 3 years ago. But the first stages of connection and community and belonging started in my early 40s when I joined EO, and I started to understand, what does it mean to have a community? And that community was one that revolved around business and entrepreneurship. But it was a place where I was like, wow, these people get me. They understand exactly who I am as a businesswoman and what my goals are. And so then I slowly started to understand, like, community building, belonging, and finding different groups of people to fulfill some kind of needs inside of me. So 3 years ago, when my son and my daughter gave me a DNA test for Christmas, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to dig a little deeper.
Oh, wow. I personally love the story. I can just see this as a movie of what actually happened when you went there. And I mean, it wasn't easy. It's not like, so can you share um, how you first made contact and what the overall rules were, that they would only reach out X number of times, and just kind of
Mhm.
share with the audience that story because you really hung in there.
I did. And so honestly, it was really filled with so many ups and downs. And so I
There you
guess
go.
when I finally did the DNA test, it was just like my first scratching of the surface, and there was no real connection. It was like third or fourth cousins. And then, but I guess the big pivotal moment was that I found a community. I found a Facebook community of Korean adoptees. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's 200,000 Korean adoptees in the world. And I felt
Wow.
like I was always alone. So for me, I was like, what? These people have lived exactly what I've lived. Like, it was like starting at like I always say this to my kids, some people in life, you start, with no running shoes, like 2 kilometers before the start line barefoot. And some people wake up and you're at the start line. So all of a sudden it's like I met this community and we started. Like I didn't have to explain my story. They knew exactly where I was coming from. And so it became this kind of like this peeling of an onion, like unwrapping layer after layer and starting the search and the journey. And they actually really helped me by connecting me with the right people, the right resources. And so when I finally received a letter from the adoption agency saying, we found your parents, or we found your mom, your sister, and here are the right documents. So these secret files that I had never had access to, it just kind of blew my mind.
Do I remember that there was like a limit, like they would reach out
Yeah,
twice, and then if they didn't hear something, it was done. But
yeah,
you went over there and you found a wrong address or something, and
yeah.
yeah, tell
It's
that. That's really
Yeah,
incredible.
so the biggest thing was when I received the email that we found your mom, I was really like, oh my gosh, I remember her. I remember my sister. It was like a flood of emotions came back. And so I was convinced that they would want to meet me. And so the protocol was 3 registered letters.
Oh, so they find
Yeah.
them first.
Yes.
Okay, okay. I
So it was
thank you
three
for
registered
clarifying that.
letters, and the first one goes out, and I am sure they're going to reach out to me. And I hear nothing. And then the second letter goes out, nothing. The third letter goes out, and at that point I'm just like, oh my gosh, like they don't want to meet me. It was like complete devastation.
Oh,
And so I
wow.
kind of quietly just let a year pass, like thinking, okay, like just that hurt was inside of me. And then I woke up, it was like March of 2024, I think, and I just woke up and I said, that's it, no, I'm going to Korea. And so I booked a flight. My husband and I said, that's it. We're gonna make it happen. And so I went to the adoption agency and I brought a translator with me, and the woman was able to see the address and the name on the documents in Korean. And so then I said, look, they've moved their address. Maybe they've changed addresses. Can you please help me? And so they did another search and they found a new address. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like it wasn't rejection. It was just all a question of everything being lost in translation. I was literally at their mercy of a response from my biological mother. And so I'm there for like maybe 10 days. And I have NBC who's following me with like a film crew going to Busan. They're checking into journalists. We find negatives. It's this entire story. And I'm just kind of like floating like an outer body experience, but I still don't hear anything. And I board a flight back to Montreal, and at a layover in Germany, I don't know, for some reason I looked at my phone and like I had missed 3 phone calls and they were from Korea. And I said, oh my gosh. And I knew in my heart at that moment that my life was going to change forever. And sure enough, the phone rings again and it's the adoption agency. And they tell me, they're like, we got a response. Your mom and your sister, they want to meet you. And that just like, I just burst into tears because it was just unbelievable to me.
So now, how old were you at that moment?
At the moment that I received the phone call,
Mhm,
so
mhm.
I must have been like 49. Yeah.
So it had been 45
Yeah.
years. I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. And this mother finds out that you're looking for her.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
that's just unbelievable. So you're already on your way home. Did you go ahead and go home, or did you turn around and go back? What happened next?
So, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. And I went home, and it allowed me to have 2 months to figure out how I was going to do this. So there was a lot of communication back and forth via something called Kakao, which is a texting app. There were letters that were sent, and the letters were honestly like so beautiful that I swear, like it healed me. Like the letters were just unbelievable. One from my sister as well as from my mother. And yeah, it was like, it was really the beginning of this relationship.
At that time, and even maybe today, did you or do you speak Korean?
No. And
So
this
how
is
did this
the hard.
communication work?
Yeah, but you know what's crazy actually? Like from 2 years ago or 3 years ago to now, it's changed dramatically because everything was through different apps. And the first time I went to Korea, it was with a translator. And then the second time I went to Korea, I used something called Papago, I think Papago. And then the third time I used ChatGPT, and it's incredible because you can get real virtual translation. So the communication is tough. It's the toughest part, and there's a lot of things that got lost in translation. Because like one of them, I thought my one of my aunts was dead. I didn't know I had a brother. So when I show up, I see another guy and I'm like, who's that guy? And they're like, that's your brother. Not only do I have a sister, but I also have a half brother. So I mean, all these big things were lost in translation.
Are the sister and half brother older than you?
No, they're both younger than me. They're
Mhm.
so yeah, yeah. So I am the oldest. So that's actually super interesting. Like if you know anything about the Asian culture, like being the eldest is pretty amazing. So I found out that, like I'm basically like the eldest sibling. So when I go there, like I'm literally I don't have to do dishes. I don't have to help out. All these like cute little things. But of course
Wait a minute, I'm the eldest in my family. I don't think they've gotten the message on that. That's great.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, it's pretty
I don't
amazing.
want to go too personal, but at a high level, can you share what your mom's story was and why you ended up on the steps of that agency?
So my mother was she was 21 when she got pregnant, and I think she was actually going to get married. And at the very last minute, she opted out of the marriage. And in Korea, it was, I mean, in those days, it was really, really difficult to be a single mom.
Sure.
And what ended up happening is my grandfather had passed away. My grandmother was the matriarch of the family. And so she basically, they had to feed like, I think it was like 6 mouths to feed. And so ultimately, my grandmother was solicited by a adoption agency, like a sister-in-law, over and over again. And the message was continual. We have a family for Sana. She'll get educated. She'll come back one day and look for you. And so one day when I was 4 years old, my grandmother actually brought me to the adoption agency without my aunt's or my mom's knowledge. And she left me there. And then when she came back, my mom was like, what? And it was too late. I was already promised to a family. I went from the adoption agency to a foster home immediately, and I was in Canada 5 to 6 months later. And the tragedy in all of this is that my documents were falsified because they didn't have all that information. So I actually never looked for my grandmother. And my grandmother passed away 10 years ago, kind of like with a heavy heart because she was wondering, like, how come I never came to look for them?
When you say children were solicited for money, did your family get money?
So they didn't. So how it worked actually was the adoption agencies were paying people to bring kids in. They were actually kidnapping kids off the streets.
That's what I'm
They were
thinking. It's almost like trafficking in a
it,
way,
it
isn't
is,
it?
it is. And they were looking for vulnerable families, so like single mothers, to solicit the children. And then, I mean, it was a multi-million-dollar business in the end. Yeah. And so we're actually called paper orphans. So we were made orphans on paper, but we're actually our parents were living.
I know earlier in the podcast you mentioned that there are over 200,000 Korean adoptees. Do you feel like the majority of them have gone down this journey of going back and finding their original birth families, or is it limited?
I think right now there's more and more connection with because now it's like it's more in the news and people understand what actually happened. So there's a lot more reunions happening, but it's the population is aging, right? So it's limited
Mhm.
time. I mean, many of the like my mother is 71. She's young. So I mean the potential I still have maybe 10, 20 years with her, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I can't leave the audience hanging. We have to go to that first visit back to Korea, what it was like, and then we need an update on where things are today as well.
Yeah, so going back to Korea was surreal for me. It was honestly, it was like I keep saying it, but it was like an out of body experience. But what was really incredible is the connection that I felt immediately with my biological family in a sense that they're such a warm, loving family. We were sharing meals, napping on the floor, and there's something in Korean called skinship, where it's like love and affection through touch. So it's
Oh,
always like skinship, skinship. So like my aunt, when she met me, she literally grabbed me and she started to whack me and then rub me and whack me. And it was like this whole love and affection. And for me, it's been one of those things that I think I was always like, my family didn't want me. So to understand that they
what's
actually
it
did
called?
love me. Skinship.
Skinship, like
Yeah.
friendship, but it's skinship. Oh
Yeah.
my God, that's so
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah. It's a beautiful term. So the reunion was incredible. Like it's a beautiful family with, and honestly, I'm lucky because I don't think all the stories are the same.
Of
But
course.
I think my mother and I were the probably ones that were the most reticent. So in my second visit to seeing her, it was really interesting because you could see the layers starting to come away. And by the end of my second trip, she asked me, she goes, "When are you coming back?" And you could just see that she was starting to, and she was like tucking me in at night and, she was cooking me all these meals. It was just very, very surreal to me. Yeah.
Has she been to visit you in Canada?
No, I don't. I mean, health-wise, I don't know if she would make the trip, but my sister and her son are coming this holidays. So I'm really
Oh,
excited.
wonderful,
Yeah, they're coming for
wonderful.
Christmas, which is really, really cool.
Do you see a resemblance when you meet your mother and your sister?
Yeah, so my mother and I look identical. It's actually crazy, like when I see side by sides. And I think it was really incredible for her. When she first saw me, I think she was just flabbergasted because she has a daughter who doesn't look like her. So my sister doesn't look like her.
Oh my
She looks
goodness.
like her father, but I look exactly like my mom. So I think my mom was absolute. Me too. I was just like, whoa, like that's what I'm going to look like when I'm her age. It's crazy. Yeah.
So, many people could have an experience like this and that would be the end of the story, but you've really done the deep work to draw meaning out of your experience. And I
Mhm.
think one of the important distinctions that you make is the difference between fitting in and belonging. Can you unpack that and how that became a turning point for you?
Yeah, so I realized in a lot of, I guess, this search for belonging for me, I really understood at a very young age that I was a shapeshifter. That I was literally, I understood that if I wanted to be liked, I knew how to be. If somebody walked fast, I'd walk fast. If they talked slowly, I would talk slowly. So I could mirror other people and totally make them love me. But what I realized is, fitting in is changing pieces of yourself. But now in my life, I'm realizing, well, I don't want to fit in. Like fitting in is lonely. Like I actually just want to show up as myself and just be accepted as who I am. So that's a huge distinction. And it's one that I feel like that more people need to understand, especially today, like with everything that's going on in the world. It's not about fitting in. It's about showing up exactly as you are and being accepted for who you are. It's a big, big difference.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Um, so, like many really successful speakers, they have a unique story that probably many of the people in the audience don't share. But there's something about that story that allows them to walk away and be different. So, I'm curious, after people hear you speak and maybe they come up and talk to you afterwards on stage, or maybe they send you an email, what do you think people walk away with by listening to your story?
So I think the biggest thing is, sharing a story like mine or sharing anybody's stories, and I think it's all relevant. It takes a lot of courage.
Yes.
And I think for me, sharing my story on a platform like this or on stages has really become extremely healing. And because I'm so vulnerable in how I share my story, is that people feel right away comfortable to share their story with me. And I think that conversation, I think any leader who is if you're in a position of leadership, I think being able to be vulnerable and share with your team to open up the conversation always leads to good things. And so for me, that's what I've noticed is that I can't believe how many people feel connected to my story, that
Yeah.
they can apply it in their personal life or their business, or they reach out to me and just it's been really, really incredible for me, just that piece.
It's so interesting because that's exactly where my mind was going is this belonging versus fitting in. I mean, it's a great life lesson, but it really is a great lesson for us who are leaders. And so I was going to say, has it influenced or changed the way that you lead teams or the way that you connect with people professionally? Because a lot of times people think, oh my gosh, I shouldn't share that. That's TMI. That's oversharing. But where do you draw that line, and what's the importance of a leader sharing and being vulnerable?
Well, I think we know today is that connection through storytelling is like the most important thing. Is that even social media algorithms, everything is all about storytelling. So someone
Mhm.
who can share stories about their lives, and they don't have to be, as complicated as mine, but having the ability to communicate stories well with a point and a lesson is huge. So
Mhm.
for me in leadership, that's really top. I think in terms of TMI, I mean, I think as leaders, we need to create safe spaces for our staff and employees with boundaries. And, so for me, I think sharing our stories allows people to understand who we are. And when it's for the greater good, by being more sensitive, being more emotionally, like available or have a better emotional IQ, those are all things that we need today. We need that human connection. So as leaders, I think it's a very, very valuable lesson.
That's
And
great. I love
if I
that.
could just add one more thing, there was something I actually watched this weekend. It's a documentary on the Blue Zones. It was
Yes. Yes.
amazing, actually.
Yes.
And I mean, I think we've heard about the Blue Zones and, longevity. So they studied 5 countries around the world, and why do people live to 100? And one of the major things that just surfaced in all of these communities is connection and belonging. And in these areas, you can live up to 15 years longer because you have a community and you have connection and you feel like you belong. So for me, honestly, I'm actually getting shivers myself talking about it because I think this is the golden ring. Like this is what we need to go after is our life is short, it's limited. We need to make sure we live our life in a way where we have connection and that we feel like we belong.
You know, it just hit me why your story resonates with every single person in the audience, because everybody has a mother.
Mhm.
And so if they will sit there and listen to you and not only hear your story, but hear the story of your mother, I mean, that's a huge lesson in understanding. And like you said, it's a huge lesson in healing, because I'm sure there's people in your audiences that are estranged from their mother.
Mhm.
Um, but boy, if anybody, thought about holding a grudge, I mean, of course, the story unfolded and you realize your mother didn't even know. But I think that is, because just hearing you talk today, I feel myself tearing up a couple of times. And I don't know if it's me thinking about my own mother or if it's me thinking about myself as a mother. But I think it really does tap into vulnerability and connection. So I think that's really the gift that you bring.
Mhm. No, thank you. I agree with you.
Ah, yeah. So it's an amazing story. And you've also had an amazing professional life. You've built two really great companies. Can you talk a little bit about those ventures, Lux Decor, Maru, and also I think it's super interesting how you've recently incorporated your story into what you do professionally. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
Absolutely. So maybe about 10, 12 years ago, I remember going to a Simon Sinek seminar and I stood up in a room full of entrepreneurs and I was like, oh my God, I know what my why is. And so if you haven't, I mean, I'm sure you have, but the golden circle is really about your purpose. And I stood up, I said, my why is I want to create a sense of home for others that I never felt that I had. And so that was like, imagine 10 years ago standing up and being like, oh my God, this is my purpose. I design homes for people. I create spaces for people to share. But to incorporate that in your business, that's a whole nother story. So it actually took me probably about 4 or 5 years of knowing what my why was to figure out how do I incorporate this into my business. And so that's been incredible. Like I send this newsletter called Conversations with Sana. And it's really just about anything but business. And it's to create connection with my followers. And it is literally the email that I get the most response from, where people are just like, oh my gosh, I connected to this. Thank you for sharing this. And it has nothing to do with business, but it creates a sense of home and connection with an audience virtually. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so much goodness there. As far as timing, had you found your family when you were at the Simon Sinek conference and you
No,
realized
no,
your why?
no, 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 never.
Oh,
No.
wow. So that was your why. And then you find your family, and boy, do those two merge together so well.
But I think it's interesting because what you were saying also about mothers is that I never felt, of course, I have an adoptive mother and now I have a biological mother, but I've always been exceptionally independent. So even like there's been a gap between myself and my family because I've had this, this trauma deep inside of me. So I also talk about that is that I think that belonging isn't something that we're given necessarily. It's something that we create. And so for
Ooh.
me, I created it for many years and now I'm living it. So I don't necessarily think.
Oh my gosh, there's so much goodness there.
Yeah.
You don't create it, you
No, it's
live it.
not something that you're necessarily given.
You're not
It's
given,
something
you
you need to
create it.
create.
And then
Yes.
the next level is living it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I told you in the beginning, I didn't know how long this would last, but if we found a mic drop moment, that would be the end. And I think that one is worth repeating. It's not something you're given, it's something you create. And then real fulfillment comes from living it.
Absolutely.
Sanaa, thank you so much for sharing your story and your heart with us today. I think you really have articulated the importance of belonging. And I know that our audiences will be touched by listening to this episode. For those of you who are listening, if your organization wants to inspire deeper connection, strengthen your culture, and help your teams lead with more authenticity, Sanaa Brock is the speaker to book. Her message will resonate across industries. When I saw her speak in Hawaii, it was over 2,000 entrepreneurs from every industry you can imagine. She brings a lot of warmth, a lot of wisdom, and insights as she speaks from the stage. And if you're ready to hear her, let us know at GDA Speakers, and we're happy to facilitate that. Sanaa, I hope you and your families on both sides of the pond have a beautiful holiday, and I really appreciate your time connecting today.
Oh my gosh, Gail, that was so much fun. I felt like we were just having a nice coffee together and just getting close and intimate. And I think that's what it's all about. So thank you. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Backstage Pass with Gail Davis. Tune in for more exclusive interviews and pro tips to elevate your events. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts with us. We'll catch you next time behind the curtain on Backstage Pass.